As some of you know, I just got back from Mexico. I was out there for 2.5 months in total, but now I'm back in the UK, temporarily, partly because I'm helping my mum move house, but I thought while I'm in this intermediary period, I'd sit down and share 9 cool things I've learned about life recently, which I think you'll not only find helpful, but you might resonate with. So, let's begin. We're in the usual spot. Some of you might recognise the church, by the way. It's not a castle, it's a church. When I was young, obviously growing up in the UK, every church I saw I thought was a castle as well, so easy mistake. The first thing I've learned about life is drastically reduce the decisions you have to make if what you want is more energy. And I realised this because the reason why I went out to Mexico was I had this grand plan, right, of, I'm going to travel all of Latin America and find my place, so that when I arrive in that place, I can think, do you know what, I like it here, I'm going to set up shop and integrate. But the problem with that is constant traveling. So each week I had to make the same decision, which was I had checked into this Airbnb, but I had only reserved it for about 5 days. So at the end of those 5 days, I had to make the decision of, am I going to stay in this place or am I going to explore pastures new? And each week that became such an exhausting decision that a month and a half in to me being in Mexico, I just thought, you know what, I've got no energy. And I remember I was in this place close to Cancun. It's called Puerto Morelos. It's a fisherman village. And I was traveling back to another city called Merida from Puerto Morelos. And as soon as I got back, I got a 6-hour train. A month and a half in, I just crashed. I hit a wall. And I realised I've been making the same decision every single week and I've got no energy because my brain is fried from having to make that same decision, which was Maslow's hierarchy of needs, trying to meet the need of survival. Where am I going to stay? Where's my shelter going to be? So if you want to have more energy, try your best to reduce the amount of high stakes decisions that you have to make. And you'll have all the energy in the world. And I realised something in particular. Exploring without purpose can become another form of delay, even if it's wrapped in beautiful distractions. In other words, he who is everywhere is nowhere, as the saying goes. Even though I went out there with the intention to find my place, because I wasn't car. That will be probably the only car that passes in this video. I'll put money on it because it's a Sunday and this is an Orchards, but hardly anyone is working. Even though I went out there with the intention to find my place, I was undermining that intention by thinking that I had to travel to loads of different places in order to find it. So I wasn't committed to any place where I was because I was thinking, maybe there's a better place. So he who is everywhere is nowhere. Set your roots. The second thing I realised is frustration is part of the learning process. When I was in Mexico, I was in the southeast in a place in a region known as Yucatan. And I had already started dancing salsa before I went to Mexico as a bit of preparation, because I knew that they danced a lot in Latin America. So I wanted to get my steps in, and be somewhat prepared for dancing salsa when I was out there. So before I went to Mexico, I took a few salsa lessons in London and got myself prepared with the basic steps. But when I was out there in Mexico, I was taking private lessons and I was going to group lessons as well, to meet people as well and to be social. But I really loved the process of learning salsa because it reminded me of this. Frustration is part of the learning process. I hadn't danced, I'm 25, I hadn't danced properly ever, other than dancing like a twat in a club when I was about 17 or 18. But having an actual structured dance where there's a right and a wrong way to do it, in my private lessons I found that I was growing frustrated at times because I was stepping over my feet and I just wasn't understanding things. But I had this moment probably in my 4th lesson with my private tutor Mile, where I just realised there's no reason why you should think that frustration isn't going to accompany you if you're learning a new skill, whether it be something physical, dancing, or something mental. Whatever skill you're going to try and acquire, frustration is going to accompany you if you're on the path of mastering it. So the best thing that you can do is reappraise that frustration. And everything clicked finally on my final day in Mexico, when I knew that I was going to leave and return to the UK temporarily. I had taken about 5 private lessons with Mile, and in order to say goodbye to each other, oh no. Wait. That's going to be mentioned in another point. This isn't scripted. Hold the phone. I'm going to mention that in a few points' time. Moving on to point number 3, the third thing I realised. This is all over the place, so I do apologise. The third thing I realised out in Mexico was you rarely know what you want. The one topic that I really wanted to explore, and I did out there, was desire, right? Because for many times in my life, I have been in a position where I've thought I wanted something, got that thing, and then realised it wasn't actually what I wanted. In the words of Luke Burgess, the author of the book Wanting, which is a really great book, he differentiates between desires as thin or thick. And a thin desire is something you've probably downloaded from other people. It's mimetic, right? You see someone else want something, so you want it. That means it's going to be a very thin desire because you don't actually want it. A thick desire, however, is when you've introspected enough to realise something is in alignment with your values and you genuinely want this thing. So when you get it, you feel that sense of calm instead of chaos, realising, oh, I didn't actually want it. So I say that in order to communicate to you that your life can still be fulfilling even if none of your desires are ever fully actualised. And why would I say that? Is it cope? No. I want you to give yourself the permission to admit that figuring out what you want is hard. Hence, hardly anyone knows what they want. There would be a lot less confusion in the world if people genuinely knew what they wanted. So, when it comes to yourself, give yourself some leeway and maybe give yourself some more experimentation to figure out whether something is actually what you want. I came up with this 2-week challenge when I was trying to be practical about this point, and I thought, maybe take 2 weeks if you really want to introspect on this, and for 1 week you run an experiment where you completely trust yourself with everything that you think that you want. And it's obviously going to be over the span of a week, so try and actualize as many of those desires as you can. Mini desires, like, oh, I want to eat this thing, or oh, I want to speak to this person, or something that you can actualize within the space of a week. Trust yourself. Whenever you say you want something, try and actualize it. But then for the second week, you do the opposite, whereby you give yourself more distance from your desires by questioning them, and keep asking why. Whenever you find yourself wanting something, just ask, okay, why do I want this thing? Do I really want this thing? Do I really, really want it? And even go as so far as to try and actualize the opposite of that desire, perhaps. You know, if you say that you really want to eat something, try and just see what happens if you stay hungry for a little bit. Trying to think of some other examples, but hopefully you get the point. And I think what you might realize is that it's a balance. It's neither black or white. Sometimes you can trust the voices in your head and their desires, and sometimes not. So that's the tricky tightrope that we all walk as human beings. That tightrope of figuring out what you actually want. A huge spider crawled on my leg like 3 minutes ago. So if you saw me wiping something away from my leg, that was what it was. The fourth thing I realised about life is, this was the thing I was getting onto. Yeah, don't deny the reality of life by not saying goodbye. So I mentioned her, Mile, my salsa tutor in Mexico. Lovely woman. I'm not sure how old she is. Maybe about 40-ish. And she spent a lot of time in Cuba, so we was learning Cuban salsa. And we spent about 5 or 6 lessons together. You know, really intense times, because I would take pardon me, I would take 2-hour lessons at a time, and that to travel to her house. And we would speak in those sessions because, of course, we weren't dancing all of the time, and we really, really connected from the get-go, you know, similar mindset and similar experiences in life, funnily enough. But the week before I made the decision to come back to the UK, I was really unsure about the decision. I genuinely didn't know because I felt like it would be a big defeat. You know, I had this whole story I was telling myself and other people that, oh, I'm going to be traveling in Latin America, and I thought that if I would come home, then I would be coming home with my tail between my legs, defeated. So I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go or not, but I kind of had to let Mile know because I had booked one session with her, this last salsa session, which was about 4 days before I actually took my flight. So even though I hadn't booked my flight when I took that salsa lesson, I said to her, I'm leaving, because I had made the decision in my mind. So I went to her house. It was probably 3 in the afternoon, and we had booked like a 2-hour session as normal. And, you know, we had a great dancing session. We recorded a little video so she could promote it on her socials and everything. But I didn't allow myself to fully say goodbye to her. Because I felt sad. I knew deep down I'm probably never going to return to that part of Mexico again. So I knew that my decision was I was going to leave, and that likely would have been the last time I would ever see her. But as the session came to an end and we said thank you and, you know, we shared a few words, I found myself saying, don't worry, we're going to dance again. Don't worry, I'll definitely see you again. And it felt like a lie. And I could see that she felt a little bit sad as well. So I had actually booked an appointment 10 minutes after the lesson. So she was rushing out the door. I was rushing out the door. I was waiting for my Uber. She was waiting for her Uber as well. We stood outside of her house in the street. Her Uber arrived and she was like, okay, goodbye. And then quickly gave me a hug, and she got in her Uber and I got in my Uber. And on the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about how I had denied the reality of life by not actually saying goodbye. So that was on the Friday. But on the Saturday, I woke up with the same feeling, and I remember that as I was leaving Mile's house, she said, let me know if you're free tomorrow, because we'll go into the center of Merida and we'll dance. Because there's a cantina bar. Like a cantina bar in Mexico is where, you know, live music is played and people sit and drink. And I thought, you know, I'm going to be a bit busy because I've got to book my flight and get prepared and everything mentally for returning home. So 6 o'clock came around in the afternoon and I still hadn't given her the green light as to whether we were meeting up or not, but I was pacing around my room and I just wasn't happy with the goodbye. So I sent her a message and I said, look, let's meet up 100%. I'll meet you at the cantina bar around 10 o'clock and we'll dance. So 3 hours later, I was in the center of Merida. I got an Uber there and, you know, I dressed up well. I met her in the center with her husband as well, who I got along with really well. He was Cuban. He's called Carlos. And they were dressed up really nicely and we spent the whole night dancing. The whole night talking and the whole night unraveling our connection that we had built and what my plans were and everything. And funnily enough, there was this one moment, right, linked to the point about, I'll round that point off in a second, but linked to what I stopped myself saying in point number 2, which was frustration is part of the learning process, right? We were sat in this cantina bar about 10 o'clock, Mexican people, Latino people everywhere, everyone is just sun-kissed, loving life. It's a Saturday night, packed cantina bar, and benches and chairs were stretched everywhere. There was about 150 people all sat in this place. There was a live band playing in the middle, and they were playing like salsa music, essentially, typical Latino music. And we sat down, me, Carlos and Mile. We got some drinks and we just started chatting and everything. The live music hadn't really started yet. And then they started playing a few songs and I kind of gave Mile a few looks as if to say, well, are we going to dance? But she was like, no, not yet. And I felt nervous because I knew we was going to dance. I went there with the intention that we were going to dance, but I still felt nervous because it would be in a public place, right? But halfway through our conversation, the music changed to a type of music called son. Now, son is a typical Cuban dance, which is slightly different from salsa in the sense that the tempo is different. Like salsa is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Son is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's much more elegant. And we had been practicing son in our last class completely for the whole 2 hours. So the son song came on, and Mile just looked at me and just went, right, let's go. She stood up, and I just felt so nervous. I was like, okay, cool. Followed her to the middle of the dance floor, which, if you can imagine, the dance floor is here. There's rows of tables here with packed full of people, and rows of tables on the other side, and a whole bar in front of the dance floor. So I was like, oh, everyone's going to stand up. No one's really going to be looking at me. No one stood up. No one else stood up. It was just me and Mile, and we were dancing son. And the song began, and I took her hands, and we started dancing. I kid you not, no one stood up. Everyone was looking at me thinking, who is this gringo dancing? And it clicked. And the confidence began to come in because I realised that all of the time I had spent frustrated in my lessons was preparing me for a moment like this, because I knew that I had done the hard work, so to speak, and I could just enjoy myself. So that is an example of why frustration is part of the learning process and why it's important to follow your frustration, because it is preparing you for the moment when you need to perhaps perform and utilise your skill. And then bringing that back to don't deny life by not saying goodbye. We danced the whole night, went to another bar, danced even more salsa. My shoes were off at this point. I didn't care. I was doing rumba and everything. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And we stood in the street, and I just looked Carlos in the eyes, and I looked Mile in the eyes, and I just said, you know what? I thank you for everything. I don't know when we'll see each other again. I don't know if. But I really thank you for everything. And we hugged, and that was that. So the point there is, we try and rationalise so much of life in order to save ourselves emotionally and to save ourselves from vulnerability. The vulnerability of the realisation that we're fragile, things end, people die, relationships don't work out, there's always a last time for everything, and you don't know when that last time is. You know, and after I realised that, I thought back to so many other times in my life in which I'd ended a relationship with someone, you know, and dated, or stopped dating someone, or stopped a friendship with someone, and it was always closed with, do you know, let me know if you're in town, or this, that and the other. And I knew deep down I wasn't going to see that person again. But I played into it, and I said, yeah, don't worry, we'll meet up again, don't worry, that's fine, I'll see you around. Rather than honouring life. And living in line with reality and just saying, thank you. Don't know if I'll ever see you again. But thank you. So say goodbye when you need to. Otherwise you will regret it. Few smaller points. Number 5 is, don't say people are judging me. Say people are looking at me intently. When I was out in Mexico, one of the weirdest things I experienced, which I'd never really experienced in my life, was, and this is going to sound very egotistical, by the way. I have no idea how, I don't know how else to put it. A lot of people looked at me on the street, and obviously it's because I'm white, right? It's not a racism thing. I'm not playing a victim card, by the way. It's just because I was the foreigner, right? And it was quite fun at first. It was like, oh, people were looking at me with a weird kind of curiosity. But then after a while, it got a bit weird, where I started to get anxious in social situations because I would walk down the street and people would look at me, and a lot of attention was drawn to me, and I didn't like it because I started to get paranoid, and I started to think, oh, people were judging me. That's why they're looking at me and they're kind of scorning me, because they wouldn't really look with smiles most of the time. But I had this breakthrough moment where I just said to myself in my head, people aren't judging me. They're just looking at me intently. That's it. I went from an evaluation of what they were doing to an observation, and my social anxiety just decreased. It went. And it was like I gave myself the permission to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? I'll put a link up here to a video we did a few videos ago about observing instead of evaluating. But the main point is maintain a relationship with what you actually see rather than interpreting it. Because I had no idea whether those people were, pardon me, judging me or not. So I just said, they're looking at me intently. There's a fly flickering over the... Get off, yeah. So I just said, what are they doing from what I can see? Oh, they're looking at me intently. There's no reason why you should interpret what they're doing because you don't have that information. Just say it how it is. Oh no. There is a dog barking. Shouts out, doggo. Yeah, don't say people were judging me, say people were looking intently. The sixth point is, should I wait until that dog stops barking? I always think if you have a dog and it's just continuously barking, what do? You can tell I've never had a dog in my life. I love dogs though. Point number 6 is, you probably don't need to improve your social skills. You just need to regulate social anxiety better. I also went out to Mexico with the idea of, it's going to be a brilliant opportunity for me to explore my social skills and build friendship groups from zero, right? Which is what I was exploring out there. I didn't know anyone. I made all the friends organically. But there were many moments when I experienced social anxiety. In the sense of, I remember there was this one time in Mexico City, I was there for a week. I really wanted to go to a salsa class, right? And there was one in this park, and I saw the people dancing, but I just felt too nervous to go up and join. And I thought, wow, this could be really restricting. If I continued to allow myself to cave into this social anxiety, this would be really restricting. And I worked through it. And the way I worked through that was, what did I realise? Oh yeah, no lingering in the doorway. It's either in or out. If you see something that you want to do, you've got about 5 seconds before you talk yourself out of it. No lingering in the doorway. It's in or out. Do not hesitate. You're either going in or not. And this is the cool thing when it comes to social skills. If you just regulate your social anxiety and you know how to chill your nervous system, or you know how to frame any social anxiety that you feel, your social skills, you don't worry about them. You'll be fine. Because the main reason why, I'm going to suggest, your social skills aren't where you want them to be is because you likely avoid putting yourself in the situation where you would need to develop them because you feel socially anxious. That's totally normal. Social anxiety is a very normal thing to feel. So I'm saying this to suggest that perhaps take some time away from thinking about the nitty-gritty details and the techniques of social skills, and instead put some of your focus in just overcoming social anxiety and learning how to regulate it. Because the more that you regulate your social anxiety, the more likely you'll be to face new scenarios, which will then naturally improve your social skills. So, yeah. 3 more things. Disagreeing. Yeah, when you look at the internet and you look at all of these YouTube videos and opinions of everyone, well, before I say that, the main reason why you disagree with someone is because you have different values. And that's fine. But what's not fine is trying to convince the other person of your point of view just so they adopt your values. trying to infringe your values onto someone else is very spiritually aggressive. In my opinion, it's best to just allow people to have their values. But in what context do we see the complete opposite of this play out? The internet, YouTube, content. The tricky thing with navigating content in this day and age as a consumer, because I'm a consumer as well, I'm not just a creator. The tricky thing about that is the people whose content you watch don't have your values. So you absorb their content and their messages, and then you alter your life path in order to align your actions with their values, which is an act of violence against yourself, to put it bluntly, because you're moving away from your values to adopt someone else's. I'll give you an example of this, right? Before I went to Mexico, I wasn't 100% sure whether I wanted to go or not. Oh no, sorry, when I was out in Mexico, I wasn't sure, obviously, if I wanted to continue traveling. So I was scrolling on YouTube one day and I came across this video of this young man who was speaking about whether you should travel or not as a young man. And he just came out and bluntly said, do you know what? 100% you shouldn't travel as a young man. You should be focused on your business. You should be focused on earning money and setting yourself up for your 30s. And I thought, there's one thing that's missing from his whole dialogue, which is, by the way, guys, I don't think you should travel as a young man because I have the values of self-actualization and business and earning money, right? But other people are going to watch that and think, oh yeah, well, probably I shouldn't travel. This is what, do you know what? If I could summarize my whole message of this YouTube channel into one sentence, it would be, hey guys, let's take some time away from the content a little bit. Let's get out in nature a little bit more, and let's cultivate or create space for your intuition to just tell you whatever it needs to. And that's where you're going to realize what your values are. They're revealed to you. They're not absorbed by watching the content of someone else. And look, I've got a big responsibility here, huge responsibility, because I'm sharing my ideas on the internet. And I don't know if I've probably done the opposite of this, but I hope that in the past and now and in the future, I can continue to communicate, this is what I think. This is how I live my life. You guys can do whatever you want. And in fact, what I want to help you guys do is create that space so that your intuition can reveal whatever it needs to reveal to you. That is the whole message. So yeah, don't worry about disagreeing with people's content that you see. You have your own values, and that's why. 2 more. Manufactured experiences. Yeah, just let everything happen. I was in Mérida, which is still in the southeast of Mexico, and there was this one day where I wasn't doing much, the sun was shining, it was about 40 degrees, and I thought, I am going to sunbathe. So I was outside for about 30 minutes, I brought my headphones, I brought my phone, and I started playing music, and I was sat there in the sun, listening to all of these songs, but I realised I'm trying to manufacture a feeling. I was trying to manufacture an altered state, right? I wanted to feel differently, so I tried to listen to music in order to give myself a different feeling. And I started laughing to myself because I just took my headphones off, put my phone back inside and came back out, and I just sat there and I thought, let me just let life happen. And I felt so much calmer. And I felt so much more tranquil, rather than bringing something with me like my phone or music in order to manufacture an experience. That's meditation, I guess. Just letting things happen, Creating that space again. Creating that space. Because all of the time you're filling that space in with music, scrolling, whatever, all of these things that we fall prey to, the less likely you are to be connected to your intuition and for it to speak to you. And it is important because that is how you're going to align yourself with that value-driven energy which makes your life meaningful. That's why the saying is, you already have the answers to everything. You just need to create the space in order to realize it. So, yeah. Trying to manufacture an experience creates tension. Instead, just let everything happen. And the last thing I realized is something that my friend, Matias, who is Argentinian, he told me, he said in Spanish, because he doesn't speak English, he said, no importa cómo acciones, siempre será mayor, no, siempre, I can't read my writing, siempre será mejor que lograr la perfección. So, no matter how you act, it will always be better than achieving perfection. He just randomly said that to me one day. And I thought, that has summarized God knows how many years of my life struggling with perfectionism. Because perfectionism makes you postpone things because you don't feel ready to do it, which means you're not in the arena of life. And you're going to be further disappointed because you're not acting and you're not seeing the fruits of your labour come to fruition. Whereas the opposite is just acting and understanding that that is a million times better than perfection because you're in the arena. And, sounds weird, but you're allowing yourself to be disappointed by life. I'm going to make this separate video probably, but I might as well mention it here. Allow yourself to be disappointed by life. Because if you're disappointed by life, that means you're in the arena and you're dealing with reality. You know, to go back to point number 4, I think it was, of don't deny reality by not saying goodbye. Don't deny yourself progress by believing that you can achieve perfection. Act. He also said, la piel te confirma si hay enamoramiento. Skin will confirm if there's love. He also just randomly said that to me one day. We'll leave it there. This was a ramble. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate it. I'll show you this spot. It's getting a bit dark, but, you know. Bro's just distilling wisdom outside his castle. I saw that on a comment. It's really nice around here because these are orchards, essentially. You can see my bum. These are orchards, so these are apple trees. Got to be a bit careful because they spray pesticides and stuff just randomly. But yeah, big old apples. I mean, I'm probably going to get done in for taking an apple, but screw it. Doing it for the gang. Yeah, that's a good old apple. So thank you for spending this time with me. Hopefully some of those points resonated. And stay disciplined, playful and dangerous. See you in the next one. Should I eat that? Probably not. It's got a load of gunk on it. Adios, muchachos y muchachas.